Hello, my name is Christopher Hale, and I am Freedom's Witness. This is the second excerpt from my book, Disfellowshipped, Exile and Liberation, I'm going to share today. So let's get started. To be fair, my father was not an inherently evil man. He was not unkind, mean, or selfish. As I mentioned earlier, he was quite dutiful in the way he cared for his family. It is fair to say that I did not really know him well in my early years. My father was not a man of feelings, not one to give compliments or to sharing his intimate thoughts, but yet not without emotion, primarily angry emotion. He would not tolerate any disobedience out of any of his children of the time, primarily my sister and I, although I think all of my siblings would quite readily agree that I bore the brunt of his displeasure the majority of the time. For many years after my father became a witness, I lived in fear, always looking over my shoulder for the next time I might get a beat down with his belt, many times not looking forward to even coming home from school. My father's motto was beat first and ask questions later. It was important that the firstborn be brought into strict obedience, such that no command given by him could be ignored or even questioned. Interestingly, this sort of physical discipline would prepare me well for the mental and emotional enslavement I would suffer as one of Jehovah's Witnesses for years to come. As mentioned in an earlier reading, my father quickly removed my sister and I from all worldly extracurricular activities that might interfere with our theocratic captivities, like attending the Kingdom Hall for 7 fucking meetings per week, ministry on the weekend, and the countless family and personal study events that were held. I recall one instance when I had purchased with my allowance, some extra fly dress shoes for myself. I boldly wore them to the family study, knowing that my father would make an issue with it, since he told me not to buy them because I was to be no part of the world. Well, at some point during our study, he asked me if I thought buying those shoes was like being like the world or no part of the world. I told my dad they were just stinking shoes. Keep in mind, I was 14 at the time. So instead of trying to determine my intentions, he threw his heavy-ass briefcase at me and then threw my shoes in the trash. Had he been real with me, he would have known that I was trying to impress a girl at the Kingdom Hall. My father never seemed to understand me as a teen. Had he forgotten that he was at one time a handsome young teenager as I was now? Did he forget that teenagers start to develop their own interests and tastes as they get older? I hated wearing the same suit over and over to all the meetings and the field service. My dad made more money than most in our congregations, but in his die-hard attempts to make humble this 14-year-old, I never got any new clothes, or at least very infrequently. I was the brunt of jokes from all the other young boys in the Kingdom Hall. My suit jacket was 3 or 4 inches below my elbow, and my pants were high waters. Remember high waters? I was embarrassed to leave my seat during the meetings if I had to pee. I would wait till everyone else left, and then I would go to the car. 1 suit, 1 tie, 1 shirt, and 1 ragged-ass pair of shoes. The looks, the jokes. Good job, Dad, who humiliates their 14-year-old son who has excellent grades, hobbies, interests, and dreams so that you can look like you have everything under control. But let's not stand yet for the Father of the Year award. There is more. Growing up in this religion, I really had no real friends. Dear Dad's main goal, it seemed, was to make us the family that no one wanted to be around. Prominent elder with elder kids, too perfect to be around and too scared to have any kind of fun. So we were placed on the no invite list. My mother had to beg other parents to let her kids be part of the activities. I never quite understood why the other kids just didn't like us. Maybe we were perceived as weird because we looked and acted so different than even normal witness kids. No one knew the sort of torture we endured under the tyrannical rule of my father. Can you imagine being sent to your bedroom after family study with no dinner because you didn't know the answers to bullshit questions that you just could not comprehend at 14 or 15 years of age? Who wants to sit and study for 2 to 4 hours on Sunday afternoon while all the neighborhood kids are outside? Anyone that did not believe as Jehovah's Witnesses did were considered worldly and bad association that could spoil useful habits. Every effort was made by families to make sure that they didn't show any worldly traits or have no real worldly desires. They taught that true Christians had to be separate from the world of unbelieving heathens, of which I am now proudly a member. For a teenager, other than home, there was no place of greater influence than school. Before my father became an active nutcase witness, I was a very active kid. I played team sports and was starting to show some promise on the track team. I played clarinet and was learning to play percussion and signed up to learn every musical genre the school had to offer at the time. I was really starting to show some appreciation for classical jazz, but my all-time favorite was the marching band. There was nothing like football season in high school. I was never good enough, going to be big enough or bad enough to play on the team, but I was good enough to play in the band. Being on the field for the pregame and halftime shows gave me a sense of pride and accomplishment beyond anything I had ever felt. Every kid wants to be admired for some talent, for something they can do very well. They want to be admired by their parents, their friends, and especially girls. I was doing it. I was in the marching band. I was making friends and being invited to hang out at Pizza Hut after the games. My music teacher really liked me because I showed up and I gave it all my effort. They were cheerleaders, man. I looked forward to halftime because there was always a pretty young girl that wanted to hold hands with the drummer. But I was showing signs of worldliness. According to Watchtower policies, I had to be reined in. How would there be time to save people from Armageddon if I was busy learning sheet music and increasing my speed on the track? Something would have to change, so my father pulled me and my sister both from all of our extracurricular worldly activities, or so he thought. For some reason, though, I do not recall what my sister did. She was learning to play the flute, but I didn't really follow his orders. I didn't quit, although I was forced to withdraw from the marching band because most of the games were on Friday night during our family study time. I managed to stay enrolled for a complete school year in numerous other musical genre classes. However, this secret would not last forever. One day, my dad got a call from my principal when I was a freshman in high school. The principal reported that a student in my music class had accused me of stealing his drumsticks, and of course I had denied it. After all, I had a collection of drumsticks in my locker. It's what I spent my allowance money on. Each month when Dad gave us money for performing chores, I would ride my bike to Cole's Music on Broad Street and haggle for the best price on the best sticks they had in the store. My sticks were everything. They were the connection to my interest, my love of drumming, and maybe a career in a well-known rock band. Who knows? But on this particular day, I was a drumstick thief. As I walked home from school, I was so gripped with fear that I actually started to believe that I had stolen the drumsticks, just so I could be prepared for the whipping and the beatdown I would get when I got home. However, nothing I did or say would prepare me for what lay ahead at this house. I hate recliners. I will not sit in one. I will not own one. I will not have one in my house or any place I choose to live. I hate the look and especially the feel of them. I will sit on the floor before I choose to sit in a recliner. It's not even a love-hate relationship. I just hate recliners. What did a recliner ever do to me to merit such scorn? Nothing really, but be an unwilling pawn in my father's evil ploy to destroy me. Well, maybe not destroy, but discipline for sure. My father had a recliner. In fact, he had two recliners. The first pair were made of a blue velvet-like material, very soft to the touch. I was very excited about our first pair of recliners. They were purchased with my father's comfort in mind, and we were rarely allowed to sit in them. There were times when we knew that Dad was not coming home for the evening, and we would sit in the recliners, kings and queens, if even for a day. My dad always preferred the recliners closest to the wall away from the door. We would often find him there sleeping after a long day at work. Over time, we noticed that the chair was beginning to lose its luster and freshness, and slowly that old dad who believes in showers twice per week in order to keep the water bill down smell took over. The recliners smelled like old ass. But one day as I returned home from school, I noticed the blue velvet recliners were gone, both of them. Evidently, new furniture was on the horizon. That's exciting, I thought. New recliners? Lord, please let them be leather this time. As I started walking up the driveway, I noticed that one of the recliners was sitting on the curb awaiting trash pickup day, and that the material had been torn away from it. I thought. Add to this the fact that my dad was home early. I stopped for a moment to look at the broken down recliner, to examine its anatomy of sorts. How exactly does a recliner recline? I looked for the reclining lever and paid close attention to the simple gear-like mechanisms that work in perfect sync with each other to perform the reclining action. And I wondered what bright engineer had dreamed this up and if he was rich by now. A particular interest to me was the actual rocker glide itself. It was much different than what you find on an average rocking chair. This one was shaped like a sine wave. If you don't know what a sine wave looks like, Google it now before you continue reading. I noticed that this essential piece of the recliner's rocking mechanism was broken off from the rest of the chair. It's all trash anyway, and I made my way into the house to see what sort of pain was coming my way. On an average day, I would walk into the living room and see Dad sitting in that blue recliner. Always sitting in that damn blue recliner, studying Jehovah's Witness bullshit or doing the crossword puzzle. Always with a furrowed brow, or maybe even a frown. Did he hate reading the Watchtower bullshit as much as I did, or was he deep in thought trying to convince himself that the lies were true? I just hated seeing him in that damn chair, sitting there, pretending not to hear and not to see me. This man looking at me, watching me, judging me, hating me. Hating the fact that I forced him to marry my mother, my dear mom, the wife he chose. But at this moment, he was just standing there. For me, no point of reference, for there was no blue recliner in the room. Why was he standing there? What the hell is your problem, man? Your music teacher called. So, did I just say that? Your music teacher said you stole Michael's drumsticks from his locker, he snorted. No, I didn't, and I don't know what you're talking about, dude. My mother was standing close by in the kitchen. She was trying her best not to get involved. At this point, my sister walks in the house moments behind me. He directs her to go upstairs and get started on her homework. After all, it was a meeting night. I am so sick and tired of you telling lies all the time. I want the truth or you are going to regret it, he shouted. I'm telling you the truth. I didn't steal this boy's drumsticks. I have my own, plenty of them. See? At that moment, I pulled out my own sticks and showed them. He took them from me and disappeared outside. Still trembling from fear, I figured I had dodged a bullet. Moments later, he came back in through the front door with something large and wooden in his hands. My eyes were unbelieving. Why was he standing in the living room shouting at me with the sine wave-shaped rocker from the broken down recliner in his hand? What's this, dude? If you are not going to tell me the truth, I will beat it out of you, he shouted. He then proceeded to ask me several more times the same lame-ass question. And I gave him the same honest and truthful answer. This would not do any longer, so he made me put my hands on the piano that loomed large in our small living room. He then proceeded to whack me with all his manly strength on my butt with that sine wave-shaped wooden rocker while repeating his questions. Did you steal the drumsticks? No, I did not, I screamed. Whack! Repeated over and over again until I passed out on the floor. Did I just hear this man tell my mother to get a bucket of water? Reality was a cold splash in the face as I lay on the floor of our tiny living room, at this point feeling no pain. Get up, says the asshole. Hands on the piano. More questions. Whack! I feel nothing. More questions. Same answer. Whack! No more tears. I was numb. It seemed like an hour had passed when finally my mother stepped up out of pure shame and said, Enough! My father, frustrated, threw down his weapon, stomped up the stairs, leaned over the rails, and told me that the next time I lied to him, he would beat me to death with a baseball bat. Then he went to the Kingdom Hall. Mom prepared for me a bath of Epsom salt. That is where I spent my evening. I had open gashes of flesh on my ass, bleeding and swollen. I couldn't even fit into my pajamas. The next morning, my mother sent me to school with a note. Quote, please allow my son to stand during class. He is suffering lower back pain. Unquote. Later that day, my music teacher apologized to me for his mistake. Michael had left his drumsticks out on the practice field. I'm sorry. How are you? Why did I tell this story? Why am I sharing such an intimate and disturbing part of my life with the world? because every form of cultism is abusive. I don't care what anybody says. Every religion and every form of cultism is abusive to its members. They just don't know it. How's that? My story is not unique. Many of us, having grown up a part of this religion, have suffered in similar ways, where fathers have taken on roles as extreme enforcers with the simple goal of gaining compliance, with the simple goal of control. While intentional attention is being drawn to this religion because of their extremist views, this does not absolve me or others from making sure that the truth of abuses surrounding this religion are told. My name is Christopher Hale, and I am Freedom's Witness.